Ever wonder what makes really creative people tick? Where do their ideas come from? What keeps them energized? What kinds of things get in their way? Is their life really as much fun as it looks from the outside? Hello, I'm your host, Lily Pierpont, and this is ArtStorming, a podcast about how new ideas come to life and become paintings, sculptures, plays, or poems, performances, or collections. Each episode, I'll chat with a guest from the arts community and explore how the most creative among us stare down a blank canvas or reach into the void and create something new. Today, I'll be ArtStorming with Rachel Darnell. I recently reconnected with Rachel at a gallery show. The last time I had seen her was well before COVID, and at that time, she was working in a Santa Fe gallery which represented her work. I had heard through the grapevine, or maybe Facebook, that she'd gone into real estate. But when we caught up, she shared that in addition to the real estate transition, she had also just gone through a divorce, and she was going back into her studio. Well, many women I know are approaching or are currently in the midst of a major life change. So I thought it might interest listeners to hear how a creative like Rachel is approaching her new chapter. What I learned is that taking risks and putting herself in new and unfamiliar situations is at the core of who Rachel is. In this conversation, Rachel and I discuss reinvention, integration, and renewal, and how her philosophical and spiritual beliefs support her in her studio and in her life. All right, I'm here with Rachel Darnell, and I've never been to her Galisteo perch, the Orchard House, and I have to say the ride here was absolutely magnificent. I mean, over those rolling hills, I came the long way because the other road is out, and just picture perfect that yellow landscape dotted with chamisa and pinyon and juniper, all those things I'm terribly allergic to, but it was so beautiful. And those flat, fluffy clouds against the blue sky. I mean, it was spectacular.
It's wonderful. That's why I love it out here.
And we are in Galisteo, New Mexico, which for our listeners is not in Santa Fe. Is it part of Santa Fe County?
Yes, it's part of Santa Fe County.
So it's definitely the part of the Santa Fe state of mind. But what would you say makes Galisteo different from Santa Fe?
It's a very small community. It's about 200 people. We have
199 of them are artists.
A good half of them. But we have writers, New York Times best-selling writers, and cooks, and artists, and musicians, and jewelers, and then people that have lived here for generations. My deed to this land was signed by Benjamin Harrison. And it's just exciting, because it's a 200-plus-year-old community, if not more, which is really wonderful.
And you know a lot of your neighbors?
A lot. I'm not going to say everybody, but I know a good portion of them. Yeah.
Well, and there's a Galisteo art fair or whatever.
There's a Galisteo studio tour. It's in October. It's I think the weekend of the 13th, 14th, 15th, around there. And it's just wonderful. Everybody does fabulous things.
Yeah, and I've been here. The artists open up their studios, and it's a gorgeous time of year. Right now, I'm looking out at an orchard that's just with apple trees just dripping with apples. So it's really, really amazing to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure having you.
So one of the things I'm asking people is to tell me something about yourself that we can't know from looking at your online CV or your website. I know because I peeked today that you were born in Ecuador.
Yes.
So you can't use that.
I can't say that, but I was going to say that. That was going to be my deal. Well, I have a Judaic Studies degree. I'm not Jewish. I lived in Israel for a year studying, and I feel very much at home in the Asian, not Middle East per se, but the whole Eurasian part of the world.
Which is maybe not something that people meeting you for the first time might know due to your Southern accent.
Yes, ma'am.
So
it's all true.
Give me a little bit of how did you get from your Southern accent to Israel to Santa Fe?
I always want to know why. What makes your life meaningful? Why are you here? what makes you get up in the morning? What gives your life meaning? Man's search for meaning. There's my theology for you. And so I did a little trek, fool's journey. I should like the tarot card. Not that anyway. To Israel to, try to find myself or find what's meaningful to people, not just me, but to people in general. And of course, art always has been. But I was on this little, prove myself tour, and I was looking for the divine outside in the world. Who is God? What is the universe? Who is the goddess? What is the source?
And where were you in your life? Like, what were you in your 20s, 30s, 40s?
20s, early 20s, college. I was in college. I was at Emory University. I got a scholarship to go to Israel. Lived in Jerusalem at Hebrew University, and actually did volunteer work in Bethlehem for the Arab orphanage. So it was the real deal. Went down to Egypt 3 different times. Couldn't get enough of Egypt. Went to Greece. It was like a vacation anyway. So I just love that part of the world, or what I call the Orthodox part of the world, because being raised heavy-duty Protestant, Calvinist, with a capital C and the capital T at the end, I'm more expressive than that. And my art is definitely not pared down. It has a very rich look with the gold leaf and the oil. It's not minimalist. I mean, some of it is, but it's got a very rich look to it. And I call it, when I use my gold leaf, that sort of some Americans think, oh, gold leaf, oh my God, how tacky, how glitzy. That's not what I'm trying to do. This isn't about the rhinestone bling bling. And this is about the gold leaf represents the divinity in all of us, that we're all here for a reason, that we all have a purpose in life. And it's hard if you've had a difficult life, or you suffer from depression, or whatever it is. But to know that you have that spark, and you can connect with other people. So back to the art. So the gold leaf, when I show it to people, from countries that I call Orthodox countries, whether it's Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, Catholic, but I call Orthodox also India, Sri Lanka, heavy duty. If you've traveled, you've seen the multitudes of gods and goddesses represented in gold, And so I sort of borrowed from that. And icons, I love icons, the Russian icons, Greek Orthodox icons. But then I give it a contemporary spin, and make it relatable. But I remember when a young couple from India had come in a gallery, and I had a big gold leaf. It wasn't that big. It was a red woven gold leaf piece. They were like, oh, they really related. And that was so nice to have someone see it for what I meant it to be.
Sure. Well, colors and culture, there are pairings that go, and certainly gold leaf, as you said, with the Orthodox. And just we're doing this in an audio context to describe your work a little bit. There's a multi-layered quality to your work. There's a sort of striation quality that to me speaks to the layers of our psyche and our religiosity and all of the culture. But there's a lot of texture and woven, and we were talking about wabi-sabi. So speak a little bit about wabi-sabi and what that means to you and how that translates to your pieces.
So wabi-sabi in general means the beauty of the material, the natural materials, and the imperfection of beauty in nature. That's actually the simplest way to say it, whether it's ceramics with a little dent in it, or a burl and a piece of wood. What I'm doing with the oil, not so much with the gold leaf, but a little bit, I'm letting the oil paint speak for itself. I'm letting it drip. But it once it does that, if you let it, if it's thin or whatever, it creates what I call little rivulets. And so there's a lot of detail in them, and you can do it thinner or thicker depending on the consistency, viscosity of the paint that you're working with. And I do it in layers, and I can manipulate it in certain ways, turning the canvas and having it drip in different directions. So it's very layered, and you can use it to where it feels like a veil. Mm-hmm. Very nice and thin on top of each other.
Well, and certainly a veil is something that we see a lot in Orthodox culture. And so I'm going to use that to segue into, because we've talked about technique, and since we're, again, the purpose of this conversation is really to help people understand the creative process. And since you just laid such incredible groundwork for so many possibilities and directions to go in terms of what to talk about, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. You've had a major life shift recently.
Mm-hmm. I have.
And it's affecting your work. Tell us about that.
We'll see. So everything's a process. I'm now once again single, and have a lot more time to myself, a lot more quiet time, I should say. And so I'm able to focus more on my work. And
we were looking in your studio just a few minutes ago, and you were talking about how you were reworking some of your older pieces. And I had a conversation last night. It's going to seem very esoteric, but about Proust last night in a conversation. And this notion of that we are never the same person now that we were before. And so who's painting now?
So I'm still painting. What I'm doing, I'm working with some old pieces and new pieces, but I'm really working with old pieces because I'm an old piece as a human being, and I'm reworking myself. Perfect. And so I feel like I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I've got a lot to say, and these pieces are good pieces. It's just that they have more to say now. There's more of a conversation, that there's another page to be turned in that book. And so I feel like they're the foundation. Like the one piece I showed you was dark reds and browns, and it's a woven piece. It felt heavy to me, and had some gold leaf on the edges, and it just felt really heavy, And now
and you're feeling lighter,
and
so
I'm hoping to feel lighter, and so I've added lighter colors to it and worked into it, and doing the wabi-sabi drippy things on it, and it looks completely different. It feels really different. It doesn't feel new. I mean, it is new, but it doesn't have that fresh look. I just washed my face. It has more of an ancient look, I think, than it did. I think it was heavy, and now it looks more like a carved stone you would find in the desert somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of like this headspace that you're in right now, is when you look at that piece, does it feel like it's more of a mirror of yourself now as compared to before?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not trying to be some young whippersnapper. I'm owning my age and experience, and there's beauty in that, I think. There's grace. There's grace in that. There's grace in the beauty of age, I think, and I think that it's to be respected and honored.
Well, for the women out there who are listening, who are at that stage of their life where things are really radically changing for them, maybe their kids have grown up, or they're out of the house, maybe they're going through a relationship transition, but say more about, like, how did you decide to reopen your studio? I know you went into real estate, or you're still currently in real estate, which was a choice you made along the way too. But you've been a painter since you were a young person, speaking a young whippersnapper. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how you juggle both of those things and how you move between those two things.
Well, having time to myself now, I have a lot more time, a lot more headspace to be creative and paint. I'm not dealing with distractions, with other people's stuff. So I'm able to focus on what I want to do, what is meaningful to me, what makes me want to get up in the morning. Real estate is very helpful in that, you have a more flexible schedule. It's not always flexible, and you can jump and be on call, which I don't mind. I can do that, but it's a schedule where it's not 9 to 5, and you can paint when you want to or around your schedule that you are working with. So it's actually a nice combination, I'm feeling, because I get to do all my people. I get to be all
extroverted self.
I can be my extroverted self and, talk and joke and have, help people. But painting is definitely an introvert sport. And so that way I can settle and center and go into the studio in the morning with a cup of coffee and what am I going to do today? Or I've worked out this problem in my head, now I'm going to implement it. And it's a nice combination.
So when you decided to go back into your studio, did you have to, jumpstart yourself in any way, or was it just something you just knew it was gurgling up and you had to get up?
No, I had to jumpstart. It was a jumpstart because I had kind of compartmentalized that part of myself. I'd been building the studio and getting it organized and finishing it out, and so I finished it all out, and then I had the space, and I had to not just switch gears, but open myself up again to my imaginings and to creativity coming back in.
And is there any ritual or
not really? Not really.
Just being in the studio kind of reconnect you with a former part of yourself that just went into autopilot in that moment?
Well, nature really feeds me, and living here in Galisteo, and especially in my little orchard house, I'm out there watering and pruning, and I'm talking to the birds and watering the birds, and there's little snakes that live around, and I love them all, and toads. I found toads. I'm so excited, and lots of different birds and deer in the yard. I'm not joking, and I love it. And my doggy Goldie likes to chase the lizards, and it's fabulous. I feel more whole in nature than
It's a veritable Garden of Eden out there.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah.
It is. And so that's really what feeds my soul. And then I can walk Goldie just across the road here, and we're just in this great hiking area, and she can run free, and I can take pictures of wildflowers, and it's great.
So are you still drawing from the Oriental Occidental culture in your
Absolutely.
work,
I've been doing yoga and trying to get into Qigong. I can't say that right. And so that, working with the chakras, I'm trying to open up a few chakras, and that's really wonderful too. Trying to move the energy, open yourself up to the energy of the universe that you have inside of you, is just wonderful,
And so for people who may not be as familiar with the chakras, say a little bit more about that.
So there's 5 chakras. There's the root chakra that starts at your tailbone, sort of, in that area, and then moves up, as you were saying, through the crown of your head. I'm thinking of trying to formulate doing a chakra series, and we'll see how that goes. But the chakras have different colors, sort of red and black, depending on if you're looking at pictures of chakras or you're looking at the stone, the semi-precious stones that are related to each chakra. So the root chakra is red, or it's I don't know which black stone it is, but it's black. And then the next chakra is the sacral chakra, which is orange, and almost any orange stone will do, but the carnelian. Then you've got the solar plexus chakra, and it's yellow, I believe. And the heart chakra's green. And then you've got your throat chakra, which is blue.
Turquoise?
Air. Turquoise blue, which is your voice chakra. And then you have the third eye, which is dark blue. And then you have the crown, which is purple. So And then the various stones that align with that are usually those colors. And it's really interesting how I was just reading a book called Becoming Supernatural. It's a new book. And it's about how you can heal yourself through meditation.
That's Joe Dispenza, right?
That's Joe Dispenza. And so I just read the introduction, the first few pages, and I started doing it. It just was very meaningful to me. And what you do in his book, this is Joe, this is not Rachel. You start, you bless your own chakras. Like I've never thought about blessing, or different traditions have different ways to connect to the source or the divine. And it's interesting, and I find it very much the yin and the yang, the Western and the Eastern can complement themselves and or just complete. Not in a way I say complement, but complete how you start off in life. And so it's really interesting to move into that territory to try to figure out how to do that. So I'm over there laying in bed. Okay, bless my root chakra, bless my sacral chakra, but in a real way. I'm joking now. But in a real way, and move up your body. And I felt so much better. I can't tell you. I start blessing myself. So, you're used to other people asking other people to bless you. Why not bless yourself?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love one of the things that has come up repeatedly in these conversations with artists is the notion of permission. And I sort of hear blessing and permission in a similar kind of way. So you're blessing all of these parts of yourself. And it's interesting to me that you're talking about chakras when your work is so much about layers. And so if you even think of going up a series of paintings, even though you're repeating maybe a color sequence over and over again, there's definitely, when you look at the painting, your eye kind of goes down or your eye goes up. And so this idea of doing a deliberate meditation where you're moving energy up through your body is very cool.
I think, as women, I'm 62, so as women in my generation or older and maybe younger, we've needed permission to do things. So I think you come to an age where you need to give yourself permission to do things. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm going to do what I need to do. I can't, I have to live my truth.
But instead of that being sort of a shutting down of what we're pushing against, it feels more, as you say it, that it's more of an opening up.
I agree. Mm-hmm. It's a blossoming. You think, we're sort of taught that when you get old, your life is over. Well, part of it is over. Part of it is. And God bless that part. Hopefully you had a good time. I had a great time. When I was really young, I had a fabulous time. And that you took advantage of it. So, and that is over. And now it's a different experience. And there's so much more to life. And every now and then I wake up on a really good day. There's so much to do and I don't have enough time. And there's so much to catch up on. And that's how I feel. I feel like I just want to say yes to everything. I just want to say yes to everything. Good stuff, y'all. Good stuff. And, there's just so much to do.
And what, this might be getting a little personal, but how much of that do you attribute to being 62? I just turned 62 myself. And how much do you attribute that to being in this new stage of your life where, you're letting go of some of maybe the things that have held you back a little bit?
I'm going to go with the second thing you just said. It is part of being 62, because I think when you turn 60, all of a sudden, from nowhere, you feel like everybody ought to be respectful of you. And especially your intimates. I am 62 now. You need to respect me. If there's no respect, there's no true love. And I'm not talking about walking around everybody saying yes ma'am, no ma'am. That's not what I mean. If you're going to be with people, they ought to respect you and respect not just you and your experience, but you as a person and your inner being, your inner soul. And that's kind of where I got. And, you also get to the point, I think, when you're 60 and 61, 62, once you get over the
Shock.
Thank you. The shock of turning 60. 59, you're like, but then 60, it's there. It's just there. But then 1 and 2, you're like, oh,
It's really happening.
it's happening. And I got about 10 good years, maybe 20 if I'm lucky. I got to hit that road hard, And whether it's, your ultimate thing is to go to the beach and drink as many Mai Tais as possible. I did that already. And so now it's something else, and I'm learning what it is. And I think it's and I want to experience that with other people.
Well, there's something that happens too, I think, about it's a shift in self-respect. So I think when we get to that place where all of a sudden we're respecting ourselves, it becomes harder to tolerate a lack of respect from anywhere outside of ourselves, especially intimates, as you said.
It's all true.
Yeah.
It's all true.
Yeah. So when you hit that, did that all happen? Because I just recently reconnected with you, and you gave me that news. I don't know where between 60 and 62 that happened, and it's not really that relevant.
This year, but
it's this year, so it's still relatively fresh and new for you.
Sure. And but I'm not alone in this. This is the more you talk to people are having big changes. And it's whether it's relationships or family or moving or health or life and death, there's just big changes afoot, and things are moving so fast, whether it's information or especially information, but just everything, because we know about it as part of the problem. But everything's moving so fast that it's a lot to absorb.
So do you find your artwork as a way back into a more quiet space for you? Or?
I think so. I think, it's centering. And then you feel like you've actually done something that means something, at least to me. And I'm not just running around, scrolling through my phone, which it's so addictive. That you feel like I'm really doing something that's meaningful to me. And I can say, see, this fed my soul, or do you connect to this too?
So I know you've, I'd call you a mid-career artist at this point. I mean, you've been selling, had your work in galleries, and is the motivation to get your work out there as strong as it used to be, or are you doing this more for yourself now?
I am getting it out there. I am working on that. I'm working on a new website, and it's going to be one where one that's very nice and streamlined. I think that things have changed a lot since when I started in art in the late 80s. You had to have a gallery. You had to have advertising that was paper advertising through the mail. Now it's just, you can sell it yourself. You can put it online. There's so many different venues. I have Instagram accounts. I'm going to have a different kind of a website than I had before. It'll be more of a shopping-oriented website.
But is it still important for you that your work get out there and connect with an audience, or is this really more of a deep internal process?
Okay, I see. Both, but I want it to get out there. I mean, I have a few pieces at Sukiman right now. It's a shop from India, or Indian imports, and the small gold leaf paintings work, and they're very well, along with the Buddhas and the crystals, and and it's very nice. It's authentic. It's nice.
Neat. Mm-hmm. And so when have you met some of the collectors of your work?
Not at this location, but I have, I know a lot of I do know a lot of my collectors because I've sold it to them myself. But I'm, am working on getting things out there.
Well, say something about what it's like to see your work in a collection, what it's like to interface with your collectors.
It's always interesting because they have this, you have this honorific personality. They see you as a very, very special person. And, and it's a little It's humbling and off-putting that you feel like you're sort of standing on a pedestal, and that's not how you see yourself. Not everybody. But, some people really do treat you in a very kid glove way, or, like you're a very special person. And that's always nice.
But does it feel for you like a conversation gets completed when somebody buys a piece of your work?
Sure.
I'm just wondering what that's like. I mean, I'm a collector, and I know things from the collector's perspective, but I'm just wondering what it's like, especially for somebody like you who has drawn from such spiritual depths. For somebody to choose your work and decide to put it in their collection. Do you have a conversation with them about what the work means to you? I mean, how does that go?
Yes, and I do. And since I've sold a lot of my work, and I wove things at first, everything was about being interconnected. So big environmental, I've been working on that, use that word for 20 years. Everything's interconnected, maybe even longer. And so now everybody else is using that word, and I'm happy. But when you meet a collector and they understand what you're trying to do, there's a special click that you're getting, that all of a sudden you have this sort of bond, with the person.
Well, I would imagine, to feel understood and to, for that concept, which is not verbal, it's a visual concept that you're conveying. So for somebody to see that and get it, have you ever had somebody, sort of explain to you exactly what you meant by that piece, even though you've never told them?
I'll have to think about that when people bring themselves to artwork, and so I'll look at it one painting and you'll look at it the same painting, we'll both see something differently because you bring yourself, you bring your own perspective and experiences. And every now and then, you meet somebody that gets it. Like I told you, that couple from India, and that was so cool. And it's interesting, and it's interesting to get collectors to tell you what they think of your work. If they don't mind,
Not like in a judgmental way, but just like what message are they getting?
Why did you buy this?
Their read?
Is it matching your couch?
Right.
Or is this a special present for yourself? Are you buying, is it an anniversary present? Did you, what is it? How is it meaningful to you? That kind of thing.
And when you walk into the studio and you see your older works by your older self, do you sort of engage in a conversation with those pieces? I mean, do you feel like you're having a conversation with your older self?
Yes. And, some pieces, of course, I like better than others. Or you feel more successful, or you just feel like they're more you, or you remember why you painted them. And that's interesting as well. And you remember where you were at that time when you were painting and what was going on. And some you don't ever want to touch again. It's who it is. It's what it's going to be. And that's nice, to see a piece and honor it the way it is by itself too.
I'm always so intrigued by that, because when artists say they just know when something's done or when it still might need a little something. I was talking to an artist recently who said, she has put some things away that she knows they're just done. She's never going to touch them again. What I find hard to imagine is that I wake up every morning in a completely different mindset. I mean, sometimes it's consistent with what I was like last week or last year, 10 years ago. And sometimes it's radically different. And I can't even imagine looking through that pair of eyes at the piece of work that I said was perfect and done yesterday and having the same opinion of it, tomorrow or the next day. So, but are you pretty consistent with your pieces? Like when you think it's done and that that's a moment in time and that is a complete thought, are you just as ready to leave it as it is? Or could you come in another day and think, I don't know what I was thinking yesterday when I thought this was done. It's not done.
Right.
It needs something.
Well, that's the hard part for artists, is knowing when to stop. So you'll be on a roll and you'll be painting and you're feeling, you've got the juice and you finished your juice, but you're having a good time. You got to know, put the brush down, back away from the painting, come back and look at it tomorrow. Because you can ruin a lot of good artwork by just, just one more little, okay. It's a lot of self-restraint, I think. And what you think is done today when you come back tomorrow may not look done. And you're like, oh, and you have to live with it for a little bit. And I think a lot of artists do that, or I know I do, that you'll paint something and you'll really be happy with it right then. It completed what you were thinking about at the moment. And you have to like walk away. And that's the nice thing about oil. You kind of have to walk away to let it dry. In acrylic, you can let it dry and then work on it some more. But so the oil, you walk away, you come back the next day, and you kind of sit in front of it and kind of try to have a visual conversation. Maybe turn it some different directions or something to see if what you're thinking if it's working. And there's a few pieces that, that the journey of the piece itself is not a difficult journey. There are other pieces and you're like killing yourself. You're pulling out your hair. You're asking your friends, what do you think? You're putting it upside down. You're taking pictures of it. You're flipping the pictures around in your phone, different lights. And one thing about people that work in computer generated, let me put a red filter on that or a cool filter, or I can, make that dramatic. And then you can really mess with your artwork. And that's interesting too, to go about it in a computerized way to see if it looks better or worse, and you can brighten it up, it's just easy. And like, maybe a little more white would help. And so that way it gives you.
So you're saying you manipulate it before you actually commit to doing it on paint. So it kind of helps you.
Yeah. So if you're kind of stuck.
Right.
And that's one way that works too.
So which is sort of more satisfying? Something that just kind of comes through you and it's done, basta, or something that you've really struggled with and then you finally wrestle it to the ground and
Well, there are those when you wrestle to the ground. Sometimes commissions can be that way. You can get it done, especially if it's based on something you've already done, but you're like, woohoo. So it depends. Sometimes you're like, whew, we can walk now. But it's nice to have easy. It's nice to have, where the muse comes and enters your body and works it out, and you're like, whoa, isn't that lovely?
And so have you figured out like how to work with that muse? I mean, do you how to get out of the way so that the muse can kind of do its dance on the canvas?
It's hard to have a muse when you're tired, I must say. I don't drink and muse. I don't smoke and muse. People have said here, and I'm like, that doesn't help me. Save that for later. But, I need to be present for my muse. And I like to write poetry too. And I can just be taken over by a spirit and write a poem. I'm like, wow, and it might be a good poem, might be a crappy poem, but you've got your voice out.
How often does a poem translate to paint?
Sometimes it's just really different. It's really a different process to me.
Do you feel it in your body in a different place?
I do. I really do. It's strange. Now,
say more about that. I'm curious.
Oh, well, now, poem writing and wine do go together. So that's a different, because, you're not, anyway. But I can't tell you how many times I've watched the sunset and come up with a fabulous thing, something fabulous, right? I thought it was fabulous at the time. And then read it the next day. I'm like, oh, that's not so bad. But it's a different process in my head. I don't know if it's left brain, right brain, but it's different. But you can be taken over for sure with that. Speaking of quick painting, or not quick painting, I shouldn't say quick painting. I didn't know if I showed you these, but I've got those. I've started a series of large, what look like Japanese round ink paintings. They're large, where like you get the brushes hanging from the ceiling and you make a circle
like
out of it.
Kind of.
Yes. So of course I don't have the big brush hanging from the ceiling, but I've done a few of those pieces. I call them calligraphy pieces, and that takes a lot of self-discipline. You can only like do a stroke or two, and then you really have to like put the brush down and walk away. So that's interesting too, but then you're really letting the paint speak, and it's very Japanese. The Japanese are the best designers in the world. It's like my personal opinion, and you just want to do it it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's perfectly beautiful. And
It's a wabi-sabi.
It's a wabi-sabi technique too. And so you have to sort of plan ahead to know what color background, what color paint you're going to use, and you have to have confidence. You can't and there's nothing you can rework on those. Nothing. It either works or it doesn't work. That's why they work on paper. I'm not saying it's helpful. I do canvas, but anyway, it's interesting. It's an interesting technique, and it's interesting. I don't want to say discipline, but an approach to something.
And how do you deal with things that don't work?
Oh, it depends. It depends. I mean, there's a few pieces I think I'm gonna just give away. Give away at the Galisteo art tour. I'm gonna set them out. Take them, please. I don't throw things away. I mean, I haven't. Some people throw things away, but I haven't done that.
Well, it looks like you've gotten a lot of pieces back from a recent gallery, and you've got a number of pieces leaning against the wall. Do you visit them from time to time, or?
Yes. I'm like, I remember that. And, that's fun. And I might go back in on some of them the more I think about it. It just has to talk to me. They have to talk to me. I don't want to force anything. I remember in the 80s, 90s, red cells, let's just do another red painting. Okay. I don't want to be there. I don't want to do that. You end up with 4 red paintings instead of 5 red paintings,
So it's important for your paintings to find a home, but you're not so intent on them finding a home that you're going to succumb to the pressure of red is selling right now, or your gallery might be saying, well, do more of these. You don't have to.
Well, not right now. We'll see what happens in the future. I might change my mind, but it's not fun to paint like that. I mean, you can, and I think a lot of people, I know artists that set out 5 or 6, 10 canvases at a time and just work from one to the other, the next. I don't do that. I don't do that. That's not what I do. God bless the people that can and do and sell. I'm happy for them. That is not my process.
So you do one at a time? I saw 2.
Well, I don't line them up, but I like to work on several at a time. I do, but it's not like but they all have something else different going on, each of them.
And that gives you a way to kind of be in this mood or that mood, or.
Well, and they have different problems. It's like solving a problem. It's like some people like puzzles, and some people, want to solve the problem. And to me, not that a white canvas is a problem. It's not. But to try to create interest and solve a problem at the same time. What works with this? What doesn't work with this? How to edit? What not to do to begin with?
Do you start with drawing? Ever?
Sometimes. Oh, yeah. And I have. Other times it's just bang, it's in my head. I'm going to do it.
So you've got a big white canvas in front of you. What happens?
I get an idea that I want to work on. I've either worked it on paper, what I think I can, or...
do you see a color first? Does it come color? Does it come texture?
What comes first? It comes as a gift from God. It just comes down from the heavens a lot. I don't just get a canvas and go, oh, what colors are pretty today. I do love color. But I like to work out an idea that I have in my head.
So it feels like it's given to you.
And sometimes, I'm reworking one of these pieces. It's got a lot of blues and various colors. And so I'm having fun with it. I am having fun with the colors on it. And what it's saying it wants. I'm like, okay, what should I add to make it more interesting or more beautiful? Or, so I take that back, what I just said about that I don't just have fun with colors, because I do have fun with colors.
Well, I think fun is a really key word there, and play and playfulness is key. But you're also dealing with some pretty heady topics when you're talking about chakras and everything. One can play and dance with that, certainly. But how do you balance between the play and the more serious aspect of what you do?
Well, some of it is real serious, and you're right. it does sound very serious. But some pieces just want to be joyful. They just want to be, a joyful thing. And whether it's like rays of light, the way a prism shows little sparkles of light, and just enjoy it. So I don't mean to be heavy. I don't mean to.
No, I didn't hear you as being heavy. I was just wondering how one grapples with, these very considered ideas and play at the same time. And then, considered ideas don't have to be heavy.
Right. Well, so when you ask me what makes it meaningful to you, that's what makes it meaningful to me. But I think play and joy are very, very important. I think that's why we're here. That's what the hopefully the source and the divinity is about. It's about the joy in us all, because who could use less joy, right? Or more joy, or
well, I'm curious, when you were back in the 20s and you were exploring the cultures that you did. Say a little bit about, you were in search of the divine, in source, and what did you discover there that you now have that's in your paintings now?
I'm going to say I found the divine in myself. So I was coming from a very Western, but I'm not saying Israel and Judaism can't be heavy. I'm just saying that to me it was a way to open up and find more joy in it, more blossoming. I keep moving east. I keep moving east in my divinity search, but I've come to the point where I've decided I'm an animist. I'm just pure animist, no rules. One base. Everything. It's just the less structure, the better, and that's where I'm at personally. That everything is divine. Everything has a spirit. Very much Native American sort of.
Well,
basic.
Good to be a good place to be here, where it's sort of all around us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, do you ever confront? Is there fear ever engaged in what you're doing?
No.
I'm talking about play. No.
No.
You never worry that you're going to wake up one day and it's like no motivation.
Oh, you mean the art?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I think fear doesn't. I think you can be stuck, but fear. I don't use fear. The fear doesn't come like that. I know that things have in the past I've been blocked. I think everybody gets to a blockage, and you have to just find it again, and do things that you enjoy. And I think within that's where you find your inspiration.
Do you remember when you first knew that you were destined to be an artist?
Well, I never thought I was destined. I was really hoping because as a kid, I just loved it. It was my forte as a child. And I went to the art academy and Saturday school and just did it all through grade school and high school. I went to art classes at the College of Art or the Art Academy in Memphis. And and it was just what I loved, but I grew up in a space that wasn't serious enough, that you couldn't make a living. You can't make a living doing art unless you teach. And I like to teach art. I just don't like school. And so I don't like schools in general. But so I pursued what I thought was respectful. And I informed myself, and I ended up going back to art. I went and got a second degree in art. And so I ended up doing what I wanted to do in the end. And I like selling. I really love selling. I love teaching. I love teaching art to people who don't know anything about art. I love talking.
Say more about that. What's exciting about that?
You're explaining. In any kind of sales, you're teaching. You're educating. You're educating people about whatever it is you're selling. And, so you're telling them about technique, what the artist was trying to say or is trying to say. But then you're also listening to the person and seeing what's meaningful to them. Why do you like it? What's important to you?
If you were to have a student come to you and they're really intimidated by this blank canvas, how do you coax them out of that intimidation place and connect them with the work?
First, I say there's no mistakes. There are no mistakes. Everything is wonderful. So let's just try this. Pick your favorite colors. We talk about, what you like. We're not trying to do Rachel's painting. We're not trying to get you to do a Rachel painting. We're trying to get you to enjoy yourself and express yourself. So any art that where you've expressed yourself is successful. And even if it's one dot on the canvas, congratulations.
So it's that first hurdle. So, but you said that one of the things that's difficult for an artist to know is when it's done. So how do you know if you've successfully expressed yourself?
Well, but we're talking about students.
Yeah,
it's not the same thing.
Student,
anything they do is great. Student, anything they do.
But what
is
if a
great.
student has like a higher standard? They want to know if they've successfully expressed themselves.
So, that was stage one.
Sure.
Okay. So intermediate student, they're really trying to move forward. It depends if they're working on a landscape or an abstract piece. What are they trying to say? I mean, it's more complicated. That's much more complicated. If it's a landscape, are you trying to get perspective or shadow, or what are you trying to do? Or that piece looks flat. Your piece looks flat, honey. Let's try to put some depth in there.
Well, it's sort of a trick question in a way, or my reason for asking is because I think that so many of us, when we get to that stage in life where we're looking at a fork in the road and we're deciding that, to maybe try something that we've never tried before. And, we bring a certain amount of life experience to that, right? But there's also this this intimidation factor of, wanting to start something new. So you said, okay, whatever fork in the road, great. Whatever you're doing is great. But then you've got that desire to know, I can't tell if I'm being moved by fear or if I'm being moved by, the need to get it right, or, so how do you get somebody past that place?
Do it consistently. I think
the practice of it.
The practice of it, because you're gonna have good days and bad days. And the practice of it. And, I jumped into real estate. I jump into everything the deep end. So I jump in the deep end. I'm just swimming. Some days, it feels like I'm going to drown. But you know what? I worked hard today.
So you're able to bring a lot of that internal process that you use for approaching an art piece into any new endeavor that you do.
So as long as you're trying, as long as you're giving it an effort, a true effort, you're not phoning it in, and you're not like, you're not going to complain the whole way through. As long as you're really trying to be sincere in your effort, I think that you can grow and progress. You may not be creating a masterpiece, but if, are you happy with it, or did you feel like you accomplished what you were trying to do today?
I think, something can get really, I used to get stuck, is that, sometimes what I wanted to say in my technique weren't in the same ballpark even.
Oh, for sure. The thing about art is, and especially when you put something on paper or canvas, you're putting yourself out there, and people can really, really judge you because it's on paper. There's no taking it back. There's no walking it back. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, it's there. And so in an art school, you have critiques, which can be, if you don't have tough skin, it can be devastating depending on your teachers. But you learn how to deal with it. But as an intermediate art student, I think that you would really come up against a lot of your issues, your personal issues. And that's where, being an empath is really helpful. trying to work people through it. I remember when I was in 6th grade and we were having we were doing art lessons, and the teacher had us painting on the floor. And we all had 30 by 20 pieces of paper, and we were using tempera paint. And I walked around the class. People were painting on the floor, remember? And there was this really, really cute guy who was a perfectionist. And I kicked one of his, by accident, stumbled into one of his paints, and it splattered on his painting. He was beside himself because he had it. It was all very controlled landscape. It was very controlled, whatever it was. It just every line, none of the paint was touching. It's like all the vegetables in their own little space on your plate. Nothing was mooshed up against anything else. He fell apart. I was devastated. He was so good, so cute, the cute boy. My teacher had a great teacher. Well, Scott, why don't we try this? And he says, look. And she showed him how to swirl the splatters. And it turned into a stormy day. His painting was, went from some placid day to this stormy day. And it was very dynamic. And he was proud of himself. I'm still mortified. But, it was a good lesson to see what she did. She, well, why don't we try this? And she made him feel good about the painting I had messed up.
Well, that's interesting. So you said empath. And earlier you were saying, what's this? Learning to be supernatural. Mm-hmm. Say a little bit about how those two things are present in your work right now, or where you're going with it.
Well, empathic in general means to be understanding to people. Just to understand people where they're at and accept them for who they are, with their faults. So that's hard to do to yourself, to give yourself a break. And so that's hard to kind of try to be understanding of yourself. And I think that's what hopefully becoming superhuman, so you can start forgiving yourself. Oh God, I wish I was in a different spot in my life than I am now, or something. You know what? You worked hard. Give yourself a break. You can move. You've got a lot of foundation to build on. And you have to forgive yourself and love yourself. And that's hard, especially if you're a hypercritical person. You're from a hypercritical family. You have high standards for your artwork or how you approach life in general, and maybe ethically or whatever it is. So you've got to cut yourself a break. You've got to love yourself, even though, you've got faults too. Okay, you screwed up, Rachel. You shouldn't have done that, but it's okay. Well, I saw something on Facebook that was just so funny. It said we should all speak to ourselves the way we talk to our pets. And I'm like, that would be so cool. What a good girl. You did such a nice job. Wouldn't it be great if we could just talk to ourselves in our mind the way we talk to our pets? And that's basic. That's sort of that's so basic, Well,
it's not unlike the exercise you were talking about, blessing your chakras, your own chakras. It's that self-love piece, which I would imagine that, artists need as much as anybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The thing about artists is they're putting themselves out there. We are somewhat exhibitionists. There's no doubt about it. And we've got a confidence that other people don't, unless you're, a performer. But as an artist, you really are putting yourself out there. It
does take a lot of courage.
And it's weird because if you've gone through art school with true critiques, and not just the professor giving the critique, but the students, your fellow students, and you're putting your piece up there and your professor keeps saying, why don't we turn it upside down? Oh, it looks better. And you're like, fuck.
Well, here's a question about courage, because, there's the evolution of technique, and then there's the internal process, the questions that you're asking yourself. So how do you prevent yourself from getting sort of stayed, like this is working, you know it's going to work. How do you prevent yourself from just dialing it in?
A lot of people do. You mean as an artist?
Yeah.
A lot of people do, and especially if they're getting paid. And like I said, God, good, wonderful. You're consistent. Your gallery people are really happy with you. And I think there's a lot of external forces. Please do another circus painting. You might have heard that one before. Please do another red painting. Please, can you do some more? And so you get stuck. And it's not always your fault. You don't really want to do this painting again, but, people want to pay their bills. And you have to understand that too, because if you're in a gallery, it's a business relationship. I'm not saying that you should do whatever the gallery wants you to do, especially if you don't want to do it, or they tell you to paint in a completely different style of another artist that's selling. That happens. You have to be true to yourself, but it's also a business relationship.
Sure.
And you have to.
Well, I guess for some professional artists who are exclusively professional artists, they have that gallery relationship. Their one objective is to sell their work. I would imagine that it would be just as important for an artist to keep something that's theirs, that keeps them kind of on the leading edge of their own exploration of their own experience, in the same way that if you're a real estate agent and you are in the studio. So you've got to balance those both worlds. One is a commercial agreement, and the other is sort of maintaining the leading edge of your own exploration.
It can be. And, and it's, absolutely. And I think that's one reason why artists, they'll be working with the gallery and they might do something, have a different outlet for other expressiveness that's more unique, and maybe, or they'll bring a body of work into the gallery and say, I'm working on this. What do you think? And they go, well, we can try it. Or, there might be a different gallery that would represent this style better than I can. Mm-hmm. And so there's all kinds of ways to approach that.
Mm-hmm. So as of right now, you'd say that you're still at the stage where you're exploiting the energy of what you already do. You don't have like a radically different new direction that you're playing with in your mind, or
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, the chakra thing is new for me.
Okay. Yeah, so that might be the...
So that's kind of a new direction. And they're not going to be big paintings. They're going to be small paintings. Little, like 12 by 12s. Accessible for people. But they, and I always willing to do a commission. But that's what I'm thinking right now at this point. Because I want people, I'm also working, here in Santa Fe, there's, affordable housing, non-affordable housing. So, I can't just sit here and say we need affordable housing or not, if you don't have affordable paintings. So I want it to be accessible to people to actually have a painting. So my ex-husband was selling apples 2 years ago out on the highway here. And he had my paintings set up too at the same time. And I had these little landscapes I had done of Galisteo. It was like just the moon, just a couple of, really simple hills with the moon and kind of blue and gray and white, just very simple. And this little boy, maybe just 10, I don't know. And he says, "Oh, I like those. How much are they?" And my husband, I forgot what I even told him what they should be. I don't even remember. It was around 100 or less or whatever, but it wasn't $25. It was in the 100 something. And Jim said what it was, and the little boy said, "Okay, I'll have it." So this little boy bought my painting, and I think it made me want to cry. And my husband looked up at the father and goes, "Are you sure?" He goes, "Oh yeah, he has his own money." I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I want to be him. So it was just the sweetest thing, Wow. And so and maybe that's an art collector in the making. Obviously he is an art collector and he has the money to do it, this little 10-year-old boy. And, isn't that beautiful? So I just thought that was great.
That's a really cool story, and I think we'll end it there.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Please like and follow us on artstorming.org, where you'll find a list of our shows, a transcript of this episode with links to the guest page, as well as our other projects. ArtStorming is brought to you and supported by ArtBridge and listeners like you. Look for us on your favorite podcast platforms.